So I want to welcome my panelists. So how this discussion in part emerged was we wanted to gather some various people who live and breathe in the tech world and hear a little bit from them about how mindfulness potentially can be incorporated within the daily work life of Facebook and Google and Twitter and these environments that are moving often at 100 miles an hour. And this partly emerged through a conversation with Melissa. And we said, well, what if we just put together a panel at Wisdom 2.0 and see if we can get some insights and lessons and learnings from some of the people who really are just live and breathe in the tech world. So I wanted to actually start out by you introducing yourself, just saying your name. I would love you to give a context for not just your job position, but what actually that job position means in terms of like what are your responsibilities within each of your different domains. So I'll start with you, Melissa.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Daimler, and I head up org effectiveness and learning at Twitter. And usually what comes after that is, what does that mean?
Yep.
So it's leadership and management development. And also that's kind of the learning side. And then on the org effectiveness side, it's all those pieces around culture and values and org design and how do we maintain that culture as we continue to be in hyper-growth mode and continue to expand as a company.
Great. And so when I was there, how many employees now? Because when I was there, there's like 400.
1,500 now.
1,500 now. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. See, yeah.
My name is Peter.
Can we turn Peter on? Is Peter not on?
I don't know if I'm on. Would you like to,
Wanna use-
when you skip me, and then I will.
Yeah. What if we go to Karen?
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen May. I run people development at Google, which is similar to Melissa's job in some ways. I'm responsible for leadership development, learning and development, talent management, career development, and I share responsibility for performance management. And that's all a set of labels, but I think of my job as helping to grow the Googlers who make Google great.
Okay. Arturo.
So my name is Arturo, and I work at Facebook, supporting these teams that are called Site Integrity and Trust Engineering. And what we focus on is protecting and supporting everybody who uses Facebook. And so I think that you were asking about what the job means to me, and I think it's this chance of supporting the people who then build all these systems and tools that help support the people who use Facebook.
Okay. So just because I know a little bit more about you, and I might be wrong. So as far as I know, when everybody, you have the user complaint side, right? So if anybody ever has an issue, you've ever had a problem with Facebook, it goes through your domain.
Yeah,
True?
If you have any problems with Facebook, you can pull me aside.
And no one's ever had a photo posted that they've disliked ever in the history of Facebook, but it might happen someday. And then security, right?
Yes, the systems that stop spam and badness on the site.
Great. Okay, so it's like the good cop. So we'll go now to Peter.
Let's try again. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Great. My name is Peter. I'm a director of product at Facebook, and I work on the ComApps org, and that means that I help support and mentor the product managers that work on things like photos, videos, location events, messaging, mobile messaging, things like that. I've been there since 2007, and I've been building products ever since.
Great. So Arturo, I'm going to start with you next. So in the tech world, I know, right? You get tons and tons of emails, hundreds and hundreds a day, probably. They all need to be responded to quickly. There's huge pressure to keep the site going, to keep people happy, to innovate. Amidst that pace and amidst that kind of intensity, how do you bring some element of awareness, mindfulness into that? What do you personally do? What are your current challenges that you're asking? I'd be curious to know where you're at in that exploration, because you can't slow that down. You can't really slow the pace down, right?
No,
so how do you manage?
Well, I think that a big part of it is to be conscious about your relationship to the different things that are happening at work. And if you're aware of that, hey John, I'm trying to be a quick study on this. I will give a little bit of background that I was kind of dragged to the conference 2 years ago, fairly reluctantly. And
this conference?
Yeah, this conference. So everything I learned at Wisdom 2.0. But I think part of what we find is that you have to ground yourself with certain things. So the things that are very grounding for me, which I think of as my practice, end up being when I have a one-on-one with somebody, can I fully ground myself and put my attention on what it is that they need and what they have and what's going on for them and try to support them that way. The same way that you kind of ground yourself with the issues that people have on the psych. You can't sit there and think, okay, there's a million things that we need to respond to in the next 2 hours. I don't think you can handle that. But you can think about, look, there's Alice, and Alice has this issue, and if I solve this really well for Alice, then that's going to touch a lot of lives because of the nature of what we do. And so I think grounding on the people that you support within the work environment, and then the people that you support from outside of the site, are ways that you can then be clearer as to what's the next step that you should be taking or the next thing that you should be working on.
Great. Karen?
So I would say, in a similar way, it's about focus, and it's trying. I ask myself. This actually started when I was an executive coach, and I was going every hour I was with a different person, and I wanted to be fully present for each person, and so, but I didn't have a lot of transition time, but I was doing a lot of switching. So I would ask myself, do this very quick, like 15-second scan, are my body and my head in the same place? And if my body and my head are in the same place, then I have a chance of being focused. And then there's something about listening that's so incredibly rewarding, and is, in a sense, it's certainly a form of mindfulness, and maybe even a form of meditation. For me, when I'm listening to someone, if I go all in on listening, and I shut my laptop, and I'm really trying to be curious about where someone's coming from and what their motivation is and what their concerns are, I can be fully encompassed in that. So it really is about focus, and I learned years ago, I was trying to figure out how to make time each day for meditation or for mindfulness, and someone gave me terrific advice, which is, you have all day for that. It isn't something extra that you do, it's about how you show up and what you do. And then John really taught me that that's great, and regular meditation deepens your ability to fully show up regularly. But for me, that's part of where I am now in my practice, is trying to deepen that, but it's largely about trying to be fully present in each conversation. As Melissa and I have talked about, our days are often half-hour meeting after half-hour meeting all day long. So you got to be able to be there for each one, or else it's over, and you've lost the opportunity to contribute what you can and to be there for the person that you're talking to.
Great.
Yeah.
Peter, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I think that if we're talking about one-on-ones, one of the things that I've been trying to do more and more now is to slow down my speech, because we as humans are wired to mirror each other, and I know that when somebody, the person that I'm meeting with is very, a little bit frantic or just has a lot of things going on, just by my slowing down my speech, it changes the tenor of the conversation and changes the pace of things, and they don't even know I'm doing it, but I'm trying to help them slow down as well.
You have also something around mindful planning. Can
Yes.
you say one or two words?
Absolutely. So when I first started practicing, I thought, can you still be intense? Can you still get a lot of stuff done and still be mindful? Slowing down. And one thing that I've been doing more and more is thinking about how do I structure my day. But also, every morning when I wake up, I look at my calendar and I try to be very present in the simulation of everything that I'm going to do. And so I know which meetings are going to flow from which to which, and I kind of can predict that I'm going to be acting a certain way half an hour from now. And so as I go through my day in reality, as opposed to just in my mind, I can just be fully present with those people because I know exactly what's coming up next. I don't have to wonder, did I forget to do X, Y, and Z thing? It's like I take about half an hour in the morning just to go through that practice. And that's helped me tremendously.
So you look at your schedule, if
Yes.
I can clarify. look at your schedule and you see what is on your schedule that day, and then you kind of tune in to each person and what the needs are and what
exactly. And I try to think about what do I need to talk to so and so about, and what is the next meeting about. So by simulating it in my mind and just being present in the simulation, I'm able to not have to, when I'm driving to work, I don't have to think, oh, did I forget about X, Y, and Z? I can just focus on my driving. I show up, and the day kind of flows from there. So it's worked for me, but I'm still tuning it here and there.
And what is the shift in that by tuning in beforehand? What do you think is happening?
There's a lot less randomness at every other point in the day. I don't have to wonder if am I forgetting to mention something to someone, right? And because I dedicate pre-planning time to every person that I'm meeting with or every meeting that I'm going to, I show up to the meeting, I know exactly what's going on, and I used to show up and be a little bit frantic, like, oh, what's going on today? Like, what is this meeting? What are we talking about? But having already thought about that, it really helps me tune in very quickly when I'm actually there.
Right. Melissa.
Wow, I'm learning stuff already. My thing used to be that I used to have a boss who was busy all the time, and I used to think if you're busy, that meant you're really important. And she used to, and I just had this vision of her kind of running from meeting to meeting to meeting and not stopping, and her calendar was completely full all day long. And I have gotten this lesson over and over, similar to a lot of what you guys just said, that when I do slow down and I didn't call it mindful planning, but I love that. I actually look out on Sundays, like a week ahead, and if I see that there's too many meetings back to back, or if I'm really trying to not be late to meetings, which is something I'm still striving for, but I'm always late if I don't have any time to kind of walk between one meeting to another. So how do I we talk a lot about space, and we've talked a lot about space here. How do I create that space in my day so that I'm not having to run, I'm not having to quickly think about what I'm supposed to say to the next person, but I'm actually really intentional about my day, instead of, I think how I used to be in my day is just one big reaction. It's like, oh, gotta go to this meeting, and I'm reacting to this and I'm reacting to that. So I'm just trying to kind of create more space and walk a little more slowly, and it does surprisingly every time create this whole different connection to whomever you're meeting.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about the bathroom practice? Or
we can. You want me to share it?
Please.
I'll never get over this one. So I had the honor of being with Soren and a few other folks, you guys, at a recent retreat, and we were talking about this very thing, and what are some things that we can do in our daily lives to be more mindful. And one of the things we talked about is, instead of adding more to your day or your plate, why don't you use some tricks that, kind of integrate things into what you're already doing. And I shared a trick that I have, which is we all go to the bathroom. Hopefully we all wash our hands, and hopefully we all, some of us will use the paper towels. So every time I grab a paper towel, it gives me a moment to just ground myself, and I use that as a symbol to just breathe and go deeper into myself, and just kind of do a reset on, how I am, how am I doing in the day? Am I being intentional? Am I mindful? And I was telling Karen, I've actually upgraded recently, and I'm loving the dryers, because you can stay there a little bit longer and breathe and, kind of be in the moment. But it's just a little trick.
Yeah, great.
But now I'm the paper towel girl.
Yeah, now it's out. I know. It's such because I spend a lot of time at different tech companies, and I know the pace, and I know the as people are walking through the halls, there's not a lot of what we might call mindful walking. So it's so easy to get in that hurry emergency mode, where that everybody's behind and everybody's constantly feeling like this sense of being behind and being rushed. So how to be in that world, but not to be of that same sense of emergency all the time. And I like what Ev said earlier today. He's like, I actually think we're better if we don't. It's not like we're getting less done. We're actually getting more effective work done.
Absolutely.
And so what does that process look like, and how do we do it individually, and then potentially how do we expand that into our companies, so our companies are talking a little slower, walking a little slower, but there's not a loss of productivity. There's actually an enhancement of the quality of work that's being produced through this.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I think I used to think that, I had this big burden on my shoulders, and how are we going to create this mindful company and, bring in all these mindful programs, and I kept looking outside, and I continue to be reminded with the great community here that it starts with yourself. So how can you show up every day and be mindful and have intentions, and that starts to kind of, it creates more of that in other people. So,
great.
Yeah.
So Peter, this actually comes from a post you made on Facebook, so I hope it's
is
shareable,
it?
but I think so.
Okay.
Wow.
You had posted about spending, I think it was 3 hours at a yoga workshop recently.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, why in your schedule, amidst the 10,000 other things to do, do you kind of prioritize taking that time out? How do you justify it in your mind?
It's funny, I actually thought about that driving to here today, about how can I explain stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the best analogy I could come up with is filling up your car with gas. When we pull our cars up to a gas station, we fully fill up our tanks, right? And even though it takes an extra 3, 4, 5 minutes, it pays so much more dividends if we do that. And I think of this as like refilling our tanks and recharging our batteries. And it would be ridiculous for you to pull up to a gas station, swipe your credit card, type in your 5-digit zip code, start pumping the gas, and then, 2 gallons later be like, I'm so late, I have to pull this thing out and go, right? It's just, that's just ridiculous, because you go home and you have to do the same thing again. And you're constantly almost running on empty. So that's why I really value that time alone. I've been trying to cook more at night, just because, and not eating all the free food, and it's nothing against the free food, but I just think it's a form of meditation for me to go home and prepare something and just be in that moment. So, fill up your gas tanks. That's the best way to describe it.
Right. And Arturo and Karen, I know we also did a retreat with John Kabat-Zinn recently. So I'm curious what your experience was there, and why taking time for, I think John had talked about the difference between being and doing, and the balance between those. And it was definitely more of a being retreat. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how that time in a different mode might be useful.
Sure. It was... that was one of those examples of you thinking, heading into it, I can't possibly spend this entire weekend in retreat.
Doing nothing.
Doing nothing. There's so much to do. And it was exactly the perfect time for that retreat. And the opportunity to, to slow down and to not to think about all this stuff, but to actually not think, and to, just as Peter describes, to refuel and to relearn how to breathe and how to be slow, and to be with a community of people who were also slowing themselves down. People I didn't know very many of going into, but now we do. And having shared that time where you're basically prioritizing the ability to be present and to focus and to deepen your capability in order to then show up more fully in all the roles of our lives afterwards. So for me, it was truly an investment, and I continue to reflect back. It's a touch point back to how important it is to start from a very solid, stable, present base. And as I mentioned earlier, my practice was much more about mindfulness than meditation. So for me, that weekend was some really long stretches of meditation, and it was a great discipline for me to experience. And so I've since then been incorporating small bits of more formal meditation into my practice, and kind of experimenting with when that works for me and how that works for me, and how to use breathing. And it's all an investment. I feel a huge sense of responsibility, and I'm fortunate to have the job that I have and the life that I have, and with that comes a lot of responsibility, and I want to bring my whole self to it and the best I can. So that was an example of an investment that enables that. And it was fun to share tips. Like, I don't dry my hands very often without thinking of Melissa now, but seriously, it's fun to share strategies or understand how Arturo uses photography, and now to see some of his pictures and understand that's so grounding for him, and so I can vicariously ground as well. So I think it serves multiple purposes for him, but really a terrific reminder.
Yeah. Sure, sure.
So for me, the retreat was a very weird experience because when I showed up, I hadn't noticed that it was a meditation retreat.
I think it wasn't advertised that way, actually.
It was actually. It was in the phone. I found that afterwards. I was just like, Soren and friends and stuff, so I'm going to go for the weekend. And I had never done any formal meditation ever in my life until I showed up and got thrown deep into a body scan. It was a very fascinating experience because I think one of the biggest lessons I learned during that weekend was when I was doing the body scan and I was still, and when I got to that moment of stillness, I was like, oh wait, I've experienced this before, sleeping next to somebody I love. And then we're talking about these things, and I go out one of the mornings making photographs, and I realized that I had been lucky to be practicing for some time when I'm out making photographs, or when you have your attention fully on something. And so the biggest lesson I think I took away from that weekend is that there are these things in our lives that capture our attention fully and give us joy, and they might be different for us. I mean, I don't know if it's writing, I know there's photography, there might be planning, there's yoga, there's all these things in our life that capture our attention fully. And dedicating time to those things is one of the most important things you can do in your life. And so after doing that for a weekend, I came back the most awake I've ever been of the people around me and everything that was going on. And I'm trying to then go back into daily life and feel all the pressures that led to you living a particular way. And then realizing that you have to work at, and it's really good work, it's really wonderful practice, at how you can have each day or most of your day be having that quality of presence and attention and those things which give you joy and fill your fuel tank. And you can find those everywhere, but you have to be kind of listening, I think, to know what those are for you. But it was a wonderful experience to be able to learn.
So Arturo's photographs, too, he always wants to be introduced as a photographer first and director of engineering at Facebook second. His wildflower paintings that are up to the left. So if you can meander over there and you want to see some of his creation that way. I wonder, Arturo, if you could say a little more about conflicts and the narratives that people create and how you kind of bring more of a mindful approach into the issues. Because, of course, one of the huge things within work are the different disagreements and different challenges.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've begun observing is it's very easy for all of us to forget how much in control we are of our lives. And this is water pressure of things that you have to do. I'm a father, I'm a manager, I have a meeting, there's a fire. And if you start weaving all of these together, they turn into these very powerful stories we tell ourselves that then leave us very little space with what we're able to do and explore. And one of the things that I've been seeing and exploring with the people that I support is being aware of those narratives and just putting them out there. So when somebody says, well, like, my day's too busy with meetings, and then you just reflect that back to them, and you have them hear the story. Because sometimes when you're sitting in the middle of the story, it's really hard to get perspective from it. And so in the reflection of the story, then you can ask the question, is that the story you want of your life? And at the end of each week, is that what you want to say? Hey, this last week I was rushing from place to place, I didn't have enough time to get a good meal in, I couldn't hear myself thinking. And if you can separate yourself a little bit from the story, then I think you can change your relationship to it. And we've seen this happen with almost everybody that I support, with myself, with my friends and my family, is that kind of awareness of the story that we tell ourselves of our lives is a really wonderful tool for shifting our relationship to it and saying, you know what, if I want to be there for the people that I love and I support, then it's important for me to do 3 hours of yoga in the morning. It's really important for me to pause when I'm washing my hands. It's really important for me to bring the quality of attention to the people that I'm with. And you have to keep reminding yourself of that because, the water pressure will make you forget.
Yeah.
But I think if you can keep that present, it's a very enriching thing.
Yeah, and you could give me examples. Sometimes in the engineering group, they might say, oh, that person they're from sales, they're always doing that, right? And so all of a sudden it creates a story of how people in sales are versus saying, what's actually your direct experience?
No, and then we have these stories that we have about other people.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer, why do I want to be talking to you? And they actually frame the conversations you have with them, and you see them with these lenses that are based on the stories that you've put together.
Yeah.
And so you try things like taking the label of a group of people and replacing with a name. Oh, you product manager, or you HR people, with like Melissa or Peter or Karen, and kind of humanize the conversation in order to have that connection with the people that you have, because everybody is so unique and different, and they have different needs and different things going on. And if you put your attention fully on what they need, almost all of the time, the right answer that's for both of you reveals itself. Yeah. Versus when you focus on it is the thing that you're trying to say.
Great. So we have 2 minutes left. So Arturo's, I think, gave a nice little closing piece. So I'm wondering if Karen and Peter and Melissa, if you guys want to have a few words just on what do you see as like the potential next step for corporations, because you all work in decent sized companies, and there's this vision that we're now exploring, which is we know what the old system is, and we're looking at exploring what a new system is. And so what are some of the key factors or key questions you think are important for us to explore as we move from kind of this crazy overloaded information time to more of a mindful, engaged time?
I think for me, Soren, I'm conscious of in organizations are collections of individuals, and everyone's in a different place. And we have the opportunity, there isn't a particular prescription that works for everyone, even if it's a very small company, but particularly for a larger organization. So I try to think about creating lots of different doors into the space of people being their best selves. And so for some, that door will be a meditation class. For others, it will be yoga. For others, it will be more of an intellectual journey around emotional intelligence. For others, it may be more around conflict resolution and learning to manage conflict with more empathy. So the doorways in can be many, and depends on where people are and how they think and what's exciting to them. And so for me, the pathway for organizations is to embrace sort of this range of pathways to healthier interaction and to tap into people's sense of meaning and opportunity to contribute what they have to offer to making the world a better place, which brings out the best in them. But you have to get there, I think, in a lot of different ways. And so that's my sense of how we get there. It isn't a particular prescription. It's a breadth of strategies for reaching people wherever they are, and not bringing judgment to one person's path being different than someone else's, but just being kind of open to that.
Great. So we just have Peter and Melissa. Do you want to just say 30 seconds each?
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief. I think, from my perspective, I think it's about humanizing the work experience. One of the things I appreciate about working at Facebook is that we use our product religiously internally, which means when someone has a baby, we all feel happy for them, and we know who it is. And when someone's feeling down or sick, that makes me feel a lot of empathy for them. And I think that's, for me, what's contributed a lot to Facebook being a great place to work, because people understand each other better. And to Arturo's point, it's not about like, oh, that product manager. It's like it's that person, right? It's Adam or it's Joe or whomever, and you know that person as a person as opposed to as how this person can help you advance. And it's just it changes the dynamic a lot.
Great.
10 seconds.
140 characters.
What I'm really passionate about is using work as an opportunity to grow and learn. And so I think we're all here on a journey, and I think the big shift that I've been seeing is people are showing up for work every day, trying to not figure out how to be a great leader and a great manager, but how do I be a great person? And how do I ask the right questions? And how do I kind of be in this chaotic environment and still be intentional? And so I think what similar to what you guys have all said, there is no prescription, but I think there is an opportunity for us to give space for that. Instead of assuming that we need one more training and, 3 days of leadership insights, it's why don't we just give a couple hours to, these managers and ask a few questions and kind of see what arises and give them the space to realize that they actually have the answer. So it's just building in those conversations more, I think, and I think that's how learning is shifting, is just how do we use this environment as the journey and as the opportunity rather than having to keep going to conferences and go to retreat, and how do we help each other connect and do that. Great.
Arturo has final thoughts that are very brief.
Very briefly.
Because he's in the chair.
So just on what you said at the end, but I think it's incredibly important that for anybody here who's getting clarity around these things and is beginning down this journey, to get support from spouse, loved one, coach, the people that you work with. This is a journey that you need support in navigating. So as you get clarity, heavy speaking from experience, and the support of the people around you will make all the difference in the world in making this an easy and joyful journey.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.